Electric cars now last as long as their petrol and diesel counterparts, and that's official. It's in the New Scientist. Hello, welcome to Kia e-Niro Diaries. Now, this New Scientist was published on the 24th of January, and there's been quite a few YouTubers commenting on this. I just thought I'd add my piece to it because to me it's no big surprise and it's in many ways an understatement. But let's just carry on and see what they say about this. Electric vehicles now last as long as petrol and diesel alternatives, and their improving reliability outpaces fossil fuel-powered cars each year because the technology is still maturing. Robert Elliott at the University of Birmingham, UK, and his colleagues analysed nearly 300 million records from the UK's compulsory roadworthiness test, the MOT, which show the condition, age and mileage of vehicles on the road between 2005 and 2022. This covered some 29.8 million vehicles in total. Now, this did make me smile a little bit because you think, well, 29.8 million vehicles have been analysed over, how many years is that? 17 years? And in 2005, what electric vehicles were there? I mean, maybe it was the Mitsubishi i-MiEV out at that point. I didn't think it was. It took till 2010, 11, 12 before we had the Nissan Leaf and the Renault Zoe, and I think the year after that the Tesla Model S came out. So if the survey finished in 2022, even that is already way out of date because in that time the UK, which is where most of the data comes from, went from about sort of 500,000 battery electric vehicles on the road to 1 million battery electric vehicles on the road. So half of all the electric cars there are on the road in the UK now have turned up in the last sort of 2.5 years. But anyway, let's see what they go on to say in this in this survey. So the results showed that EVs now have an average lifespan of more than 18.4 years, outlasting the average diesel vehicle at 16.8 years and almost matching the average petrol vehicle at 18.7 years. The average EV now covers 200,000 kilometres during its life, surpassing the 187,000 kilometres clocked up by petrol counterparts, but falling short of the 257,000 kilometres that diesels reach on average. Elliott says the results prove that electric cars aren't only a viable alternative to petrol and diesel, but in some ways already beat them. The research also shows that long-term reliability is improving. The likelihood of an EV failing and ending up on the scrap heap in any given year is declining around twice as fast as it is for petrol vehicles and around 6 times as fast as for diesels. The early electric cars were not so good and they were not so reliable, says Elliott. But the main point is, I think, the technology is improving very rapidly. Now, this in some ways makes me smile, and in other ways it's great to have some data. But how relevant is that data? And what do we mean when we talk about reliability? Now, for me, reliability is that I walk out there, I get in the car, I switch it on, and it can take me from A to B. And there's been a lot written by some of these big companies like JD Power that electric cars are, certainly a few years ago, aren't very reliable. And you actually look into what they mean by reliability and they'll say an electric window switch failed, or the software wouldn't come on, or it was something that didn't stop you getting from A to B. I mean, the only thing that's ever stopped me getting from A to B temporarily in the Kia e-Niro is the 12-volt battery failed, and that was really my fault. So if you look on YouTube, you'll find lots of videos of electric cars, case studies that have done over 200, 300,000 miles, even more. I think there's an airport taxi up somewhere around Manchester, a Tesla Model S that's done like 430,000 on the original motors and battery. And long before I bought the e-Niro back in 2019, I was interested in electric cars, and I did a lot of thinking about, how they're likely to age and how durable they're going to be, and the fewer components you have, the more reliable something is. Um, it's just sort of basic reliability physics, and there's maths that you can do to show this. And of course, you know, in electric vehicle drivetrain, you've got about 7 moving parts as opposed to many hundreds of moving parts in a fossil fuel burning car. And of course, it's also not only that; it's the number of subsystems. And you know, for those of us who've owned old petrol and diesel cars, you know, you buy a 10-year-old one and it's basically solid, but you know that at some point, you know, the starter motor will need replacing, or the fuel pump, or the water pump, or a belt will break, or something with the exhaust system will go. There's just so many subsystems that mean that you pay to get the car fixed, and then the question is, how long does it actually stay fixed? And I think as electric vehicles age, and this survey doesn't really talk about this, but it's sort of obvious to me that as electric vehicles age, they will fail. I mean, everything fails eventually, but you've got so many fewer components that you would need to replace to get it back on the road again. And so this question of how long does it stay fixed? Well, it's likely to stay fixed a lot longer. I mean, electric motors, I mean, they, you know, the time they're most likely to fail is in the first few months of owning the vehicle, and that would have arisen from a fault at the factory. And I have actually found a few occasions on the eNero Facebook page where people did have motor failures in the same model of car that I've got, but it all happened very early on in the ownership of the car, and it just got swapped out under warranty. I just find it quite funny that, you know, they're now saying, oh, you know, electric vehicles are as durable, will last as long. And of course, you know, for anyone who owns one and has watched, as I have over 6 years, that I've had no battery degradation. Well, I must have had some battery degradation, but there's a buffer of 3.5 kilowatts on the eNero, 3.5 kilowatt hours on the eNero battery, and I haven't even used that up yet. So, you know, I mean, I'm 6 years and 115,000 kilometers in, and you know, this car is clearly going to go on for a lot longer. And so, anyway, interesting. It certainly puts to bed, you know, there's, you know, at first we had the you know, the fossil fuel mob, the petrol heads saying, oh, you know, those batteries, they won't last more than 3-4 years. And then it was sort of like, they'll last 5 years and then you'll need to change it. And you won't want to buy a second-hand one because it's going to cost you £20,000 to replace the battery. And now it's like, oh, well, the battery will only last 10 years. What's it like if I buy an old one and I'll have to replace the battery? Well, I mean, batteries are going to go on for, you know, 300,000 miles or more if the car ever gets to the point of doing that. I mean, suspension units are going to fail, the steering rack will fail, something else will fail that will put the car to the end of its life, and it won't be the battery. So it's unlikely to be the battery. And if you do ever get a fault with the battery, well, you won't need to replace the whole thing. There's lots of companies now that will diagnose down to the module level and change it for you. But anyway, there we have it. It's official in the New Scientist that electric vehicles, I mean, what were they testing? You know, very early Nissan Leafs and you know, and Renault Zoes, because nothing else has really got that old yet. But all the indications are that electric vehicles are going to last a lot longer and be more viable and much cheaper to maintain than old fossil fuel cars. There we go. It's in the New Scientist. Until the next time.